Welcome back to The Authentic Advantage, the podcast where we explore the stories, experiences, and the perspectives that challenge what we think we know about ourselves and the world around us. Today's guest is definitely someone who operates outside of the conventional path. Samantha Sharma is a rapper, writer, creative entrepreneur, and ding, 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 dominatrix, whose work explores embodiment, power, self-expression, sexuality, healing, and human connection. So whether you're listening out of curiosity, skepticism, fascination, or all three, this conversation isn't about shock value. It's about understanding a world most people know very little about. We're talking about identity, empowerment, consent, misconceptions, creativity, and what life is really like behind a profession that is often misunderstood. So Sam, with that, thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm so happy to be here, Angie. Thank you for having me.
I love your willingness to come on here and educate. And by the way, to everyone else, I've spent some time with Sam. She is absolutely amazing. I love her energy. And as an ex-dancer myself, coming from a very, we'll just say, hidden world, it's really nice to be able to resonate with you and hear your story and compare notes. And I do think it's very vital that we educate everyone out there. So we're going to kick it off, though, with something fun. I don't have a name for this game, but it's myth, truth, or twist. So I'm going to name something and then you call it whether it's a myth, truth, or it could be either. So it's a twist.
Okay. Heard. Got it.
Awesome. Okay. Here we go. Dominatrix hate men. Okay. Myth. Most clients are wealthy executives.
Twist.
Okay. The person with the most power in the room is the dominatrix.
True.
People will often cry during sessions.
Very true.
Not you though, right?
No.
Okay, true. That's something I just learned. Okay. The work is more emotional than physical.
True.
Shame is one of the biggest hidden struggles people carry.
Very true.
All right. And people are far less honest about their desires than they think they are.
Very true.
Got a lot of truth here. Okay. Confidence and
Good
sexuality are connected.
Definitely true.
Absolutely. And then last one,
Yes.
everyone has a hidden side they do not show the world.
Mostly true. Yes.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's dive into you. When did you first realize that this path was part of who you were?
So more generally, I have known that the path of sexuality, sexual healing, sacred sexuality has been on the forefront of my curiosity and drive and motivation since I was a kid. I went to my first play party when I was 19 and it was just game over. I just got exposed to so many stimulating. I'm also like very intellectual. And so intellectually stimulating, somatically stimulating, pleasure stimulating, just so many things lit me up. I learned so much about myself and other people and humans. And it was game over at that time. I was 19. And it's just been a constant path of discovery, learning, healing, empowerment, sharing. Got deeply into Tantra when I was 26. And so being a Dom is newer. I have stepped into that role professionally about this year. And before that was exploring it with friends and partners for about a year and a half. So
that's usually where it stems from, right? It's like,
yeah.
Whether we act on it or not later. What were you doing before I guess we'll specifically call it the domination?
Pro-doming. Yeah, before pro-doming. So as we'll talk about a little bit later, I'm a professional musician as well. And for many, many years, I've been trying to just make that be the one and only thing and focus and financial abundance, income in my life. And so I've spent like 5.5 years just like grinding and making music work for me. Being a, creative, independent Los Angelian and with just side work. There's so many side hustles out here in LA. I freaking love it because everyone's trying to make their dreams come true. So you're like, you want a dog? I could walk it. You want a house? I could sit it.
Right?
That was just the energy for like 4.5 years before my income started really
so true.
Yeah.
By the way, I sat down and listened to some of your music. Freaking just epic. Like, I was not expecting what came out to come out. Like, you rap. It is just phenomenal. And
thank you
we'll
so
tell
much.
everyone at the end where to find you, but you guys got to go listen to her work. And
heck yeah.
Yeah. So we'll dive back into that. But I love that. A true Angelino at heart. And I can relate to that too. Like, hey, it's like you open up the jacket. What do you want? I got this.
Yes. Exactly. Graphic design, this, that, it's just like whatever you need, I got you.
Right. You got Zell? I got you.
Yeah, exactly.
That's hilarious. I can host your party.
100%.
So back to, you called it pro-doming. What is that?
Yeah. Well, just to clarify between doing it, say, at parties or with friends or with partners for free or something versus professional doming. So I am
Perfect.
a pro dom. I charge for my services. The only people I don't charge are my lovers.
Ooh. Get in line, guys.
Exactly.
Okay, so then what is the biggest misconception people have about dominatrix work?
I'll say right off the bat that it's all like intense sadism and that it's all very degrading or humiliation or sissification or very intense impact or denial. Like all of those things obviously absolutely exist. And I engage those modalities. But it can be anything that you want. Domination is just surrendering your power to somebody else, temporarily giving them control, giving them the reins, being able to put yourself in the receptive mode and just fucking receive. I like to say, and this is like one of the first things I learned about doming from the book Unbound, but it's, as a submissive, your only job is to go inward and feel your feelings. And as a dominant, your primary role is to focus all of your attention outward onto that individual and attune to them and give them what they need, within your agreed upon consensual, agreements. And so it can be anything. My sessions are very spiritual, sensual, tantric. Sometimes they do get very sadistic, but there's so much more that's going on there that is like soft and nurturing and bringing out playful. Some of my sessions are we just laugh and laugh and laugh. It's a lot of fantasy stuff. So it's not all whips and chains and, crying level 10.
And I can see how what's put out there on media and movies, that is the vision that everyone has. But I know firsthand how very, very different it can be on the other
Yes.
side of that room. And
Yeah.
they're just such a spiritual experience, really. What you said it earlier. I think you can definitely have many of those and can be very
Huge.
rewarding. What percentage of your clients are seeking power versus the ones seeking healing, acceptance, and connection?
Yeah. So a submissive would generally be seeking to give their power away temporarily within the confines of the container. And that is very healing. Some other people are coming to me directly. So before I transitioned, also this is another thing that I do and that I used to do before I transitioned into being a dominatrix. I've done energy work for years and years and years. I grew up in Sedona. That was where I was popped out. So just quantum energy work and channeling and past life recollection and tarot and deep, honestly, like mechanical quantum energy healing work is what I've been doing for years. And I bring that into all of my sessions. And so I refer to myself as a shamanatrix, like really bringing this wealth of spiritual wisdom. I really like to dominate people spiritually. A lot of people freaking need that in our culture.
Yeah. You already talked about how it is more of like an energetic, healing, spiritual experience. There can be playfulness and laughter. So it isn't that just submissive, demonic nature.
Yes. So just the act of giving your power away to someone can be very healing. And that is ultimately what is at the root of submission and domination. But some of my clients do come to me for specific things. Like I have a client right now who's coming out as transgender. I have a client who has a lot of homoerotic fantasies, but has a lot of internalized homophobia. I have a client, there's like endless things that like people do specifically seek sexual healing for. And all of it to me, even if it's just play and we're just like laughing for an hour, all of that is healing work to me.
And it's so taboo, like in our world, to talk about these kind of things. And we keep, everything hidden. So I love that you're out there doing this kind of work. And I could totally see like some of the things that you just named, see why they would need that help or that handhold. And I can think of maybe like high power executives who are making decisions all day long and they're just like, I am done. And
Yep.
that's like a release for them.
Yep.
Awesome.
100%.
What has this profession taught you about boundaries?
Make sure you got them and make sure that what it is just a constant sharpening of like, there's no room or negotiation for arguing with my intuition or my body. So I have turned down 4 clients in the last month or so because it just hit as a no in my body. And some of them gave me kind of obvious yellow, orange flags where I was like, okay, well, if you call me at 5 a.m., that's a really big yellow flag, like don't do that. But other things are just like, they didn't necessarily say anything, but my body was just like, it's a no, it's gotta be right for both people. And it doesn't mean that they were unsafe or that something really bad was going to happen, but it does mean that we're not the right fit for each other. Just like any relationship, professional, romantic, friends, whatever, you both have to be a fit for there to be magic. And so I just don't second guess myself at all when it comes to whatever the boundary is or the yes or the no is for myself.
Following your intuition is key in anything. And I always preach that. And I'm big on that because looking at my track record, I ignore red flags. So probably shouldn't get into this kind of work. But is this something you do alone though, or do you have help? I mean, I'm sure a lot of people are wondering like this, it's scary. Like maybe they thought about doing some type of work like this, but they're scared, to be in a room one-on-one with somebody else.
That's fair. There's risk involved. That is what it is. There are conditions though that can make it safer. I mean, you can practice at a dungeon where there's like kind of more formal practices, and you sign in, and there's safety, and maybe there's a security guard at the dungeon or something like that. I don't resonate with a ton of dungeon spaces because I am like, for me, it's such ritual. So I need to be able to like really have an energetic imprint on the place. So I negotiate at other spaces with my clients, whether that's a hotel or, some clients I'll go to their home, or if I've been seeing a client for like at least 6 months and I totally trust them, I have a beautiful healing space sanctuary in my home. So it's kind of, depends on your ability to build trust with your clients. But yeah,
Absolutely.
there's always going to be natural risk in this work. So I do really tell people like, don't get into this line of work if you don't have a clear signal to your safety and your intuition, and you're not scared to act on those messages.
Words of wisdom right there. And I think there's risk to a lot of jobs. We just never think of it. I think a lot of people do struggle to communicate what they actually want. Why do you think that is?
Goodness gracious, everything in our culture, family, etc., has conditioned us to be that way. I mean, we are only productive and of use and of to creating capital, which we are under capitalism, and therefore that's our primary role. We are only able to do that if we cut off from what our actual desires and purpose and passion is in life. That's the only way that we are of service in capitalism. And so we actually have to do that, or we go effing crazy, or we actually change our lives around and do the thing that we love, which is very challenging work. Like, I do not say that lightly, but those are kind of the options you have, like you numb out and you push it down, or you deal with it and then you change your life around and around your purpose, your passion, your desires, your pleasure.
When people suppress themselves for too long, you start seeing them basically numb out or they just live a life that is not aligned.
Yeah, it can manifest in so many different ways. Sometimes it manifests more dramatically. Sometimes it manifests violently. I was exposed to someone who was in their heart homosexual but repressed that, and then it came out where they ended up having sexual violence because they were repressing this thing that their reality, their needs, their desires. So I think it can be any manifestation from like full on having a psychotic break and becoming violent to yourself or others, or just like tuning down your pleasure sensors all day long and just tuning out. And like for me, when I used to work a 9 to 5 job, later when I worked bartending or whatever, like I would have to go to work high on marijuana or I couldn't be there because I was so draining and depressed, and it was just robbing my energy of all of my life force that I had offered in this world. I was just wasting it in this location, and I knew that. And so I couldn't actually be there and like be sober and be okay. So I had to just numb out with marijuana. So, there's
Yeah.
all this like range of ways that we do that. We get jealous, we get mad at other people, we project, we attack. Shame is the source of so much violence on our planet.
Going back to what you said, you had to get high in order to go to work. I danced for over 10 years and I would be completely sober, one of the few, but I would go in there, hustle my money and get the hell out of there. But I will tell you, the last, I would say, year and a half, I could not work without drinking, like
Yep.
just to get through my shift. And it was
Yep.
absolutely terrible. My time was
Yep.
over. I needed to move on. I just wasn't there yet. But I can relate to what you're saying. And it's true. We really do need to listen to ourselves and our needs. And talking about shame, you've spoke about shame release. What role does shame play in people's lives? And I know you spoke a little bit about it right now.
I think it will totally control you from the background. So you might not be aware that it's like running your operating system, but it's going to limit the exposure and risks that you take in life. It's going to be that voice in the back of your head that tells you you're not good enough or you don't deserve it, or all of these ways where it just holds you back. And like, I cannot emphasize with enough importance how powerful we are as human beings, not just of creating our reality into what we want it to be, but of pleasure. I mean, I came from a world where like I didn't orgasm until I was in like my mid late 20s. And even then, it was such a long process for me to feel sexual pleasure because I had so much sexual trauma. And so I didn't even know. But now, as I continue to be exposed, it's just infinite. I can be so multi orgasmic for literally hours. I can orgasm from my lover, like licking my back if I'm in enough elevated state, or energy orgasms where I don't need any touch. Like, the pleasure that we can course through our bodies is literally divine. And it's not just relegated to this realm of like, well, that's just romance and sexuality. It's like, no, bro, that's the energy of goddess, God, source that we channel through the world that then funnels out into all other aspects of your reality through that portal, including how well you're doing at work and how you're manifesting and your relationships, etc. Like, this is such a core part of who we are. And we just act like, oh, well, that's just that one domain of our lives. And I can suppress that and just be happy in these other areas of my life.
You touched on so many great points. First of all, show me your ways. Second of all, I mean, I'm just thinking about the amount of like people out there who are not having sex. And it is all energy. It really is. I do see this shift, like the newer generations coming up, how we're more open to talk about it and we realize what energy we all are. And then I just feel like the rest of the world's kind of sleeping in that old school mentality of, and it's like a chore, right?
Yeah.
Or
Which I
they're
want to be real, just real fast and say sometimes it is a chore. Like, I have been in relationships before where both of us, just where we're at in our lives, creating intimacy is work. It's not just like you're tired, you're doing this, you're doing that. You might have kids, you might have this. Like, creating time and space for intimacy and pleasure is something that you actually have to work for, but you have to decide that it's valuable enough to do the work for, and then you get to see the benefit. It's not the other way around.
Absolutely. And so you're going to run into those walls, but it's very important. Like, there's so many retreats and classes that you can take together now that really help you overcome those hurdles because they're going to happen, right? But you
Yep.
do, to your point, you have to put in the work. You have to go to those classes. You have to, right? But it's so worth it. What is something that would genuinely shock people about your clients? Because again, people have like this one vision.
Yeah. Like, okay, this is funny. And maybe not like most of my clients, but enough that I've tracked this pattern. And I think it's like the funniest thing to share. Yo, low key, everyone's a little bit gay and everyone's a little bit like scared of that. And like, as a queer woman, I'm just like, you guys, pleasure is pleasure is pleasure. But it's just so interesting how men in particular feel like they are not allowed to explore any kind of homoerotic desire, and how they sometimes then need someone else, and someone who's a woman and someone who's going to make them or coerce them into this fantasy, into allowing themselves to feel that pleasure. And then they get to access all this really yummy pleasure.
Yeah.
So I would say that that is like one thing that I didn't necessarily anticipate going into this work, but like the amount that I peg is hilarious.
That is, but I can actually see that. Well, everyone is a little bit gay. For those who don't know, I was previously married to a woman. And so, yeah. And so when people find out, they're like, wait, what? I'm like, yeah, I love who I love. But in those male relationships, they have some desires. I could tell you, like the men that I can kind of see that too. And I've always questioned, like, you say that you wouldn't, but I think you would.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we're taught by society to feel and think and be a certain way. And so we don't explore that sexual side. So that's actually that is a genuine shock, but it aligns. Have you ever had a session that completely changed how you viewed humanity in general?
I think it was like my last session that I had with one of my partners before I decided to do this professionally, do the damn thing. And it was just so profound. Again, I do energy work, and I am often able to help people access like past or parallel life things that need healing. But I hadn't really combined that very intensely, like with the somatic, or with, like impact play, with flogging, with all these different things. And so putting them together was so effing powerful. My partner was just like crying for a very long time. A lot of my sessions just end in like me holding men crying, by the way, which is like the most beautiful thing in the world. If more men could just cry and be held, this world would be profoundly different. And so it's such an honor when men have that release with me. And I just knew at that time that I was like, this is my calling. This is sacred work. This is healing work. And doesn't matter what anyone else says or thinks or judges or whatever. Like, I know that this is part of my purpose in life. And so I'm going to just keep doing this 10 toes down.
You just dove into my next two questions, which was, what does your family and friends think about it? And also, have you ever felt judged for your work? And I think you answered that. Of course, people judge. We know that, especially this type of
Yeah.
work. But
Yeah.
you're past
I
that.
think
But what about
in
your family?
general, yeah, in general though, I feel incredibly seen and supported. Like, okay, just to clarify too, like you probably picked this up from my vibe already. I am who I am, who I am. Like wherever I go, whatever I'm doing, like I will talk openly about doming or weird stuff or this or repping or whatever, like wherever I am. I was a weirdo, being like the little white girl who gets up and raps. Like, what the fuck? That's weird. That has brought a lot of judgment too. So it's just like I have faced judgment, but less than you might think. I think more people respond with curiosity and intrigue than not. And the ones who do respond with judgment, it's either a very clear, like, yo, I see your triggers. So, like, I don't really feel upset by this. I just see where you're judging your own sexuality or where you're judging your own power, holding yourself back. So, it's pretty easy for me to access compassion. And I'm just like such a stay in my own lane kind of gal. I'm just like, I could give a fuck.
Yeah.
But in general, my friends are so supportive. My family knows some things that I do, and they are very supportive. My mom is just like, I tell her about my sex parties and my polyamorous lifestyle and this and that. And she's, oh my goodness, honey, I love it. If I could have done that, I would have done that my day. I was with a woman once. Like it's so real. It's so funny. She loves it. My sister is so supportive.
I love how supportive she is. I just wish all parents could be that supportive. I mean,
Yes,
my parents were
100%.
supportive with my dancing, so it's,
Yeah, heck yeah. Love that.
yeah, I would, but so I couldn't resonate with the girls who'd be like, "Oh, my family doesn't know." I'm like, "Oh, you're hiding this? That sucks
Yeah,
for you."
totally.
It does
Totally.
though. It does,
Yeah.
and it really impacts you, mentally and emotionally. So,
Yeah.
okay, I did. So this is like an off the wall question, but I know a lot of people are probably wondering, okay, like what happens in that room? Do you actually have sex? Like, do you touch? I'm sure, like, so in the best way that you know how, explain to somebody, okay, here's what could typically happen.
100%. And I'm just going to speak from my experience in my sessions because everyone's going to be different. But my sessions are high key ritual. So we always start with like a tea, a check in, and then I have my clients get on their knees in like a position, particular positions to start to like release the power to me. We do some breath work. Most of my clients I'll collar because it really helps a physical signifier of like, I'm not in control right now. The only reason I don't is if someone has like a neck trauma or they don't want their neck touched. And then it depends on the session from there. But that's always the intro. And then the exit is always like, I'm very big into aftercare. So it might be snuggling, it might be journaling, something like that. And then in between, it's whatever medicine is needed. I think I mentioned the term shamanatrix, which is what I use to describe a very like high key spiritual experience and guide within this container. But almost all of my sessions include tantra and impact play because I live for impact play. I love flogging. That's like my number one skill that I continue to develop and refine. But I love all impact play. Just got into ball busting. I'm obsessed with that. Um, you know, some of my clients, I've been blessed enough to have like a service sub who literally just like ran me bubble baths and made me dinner and like fed me in the tub and gave me a massage and
Oh my God.
delicious. And then, as far as sexuality goes, most of my session, 99% of the session is like non explicitly sexual touch. For some clients, if we worked up the relationship, like I said, I'll do pegging or other ways where I might touch them that feel like really yummy and complete and nourishing and sensual. But no one is allowed to touch my body except for ass worship and foot worship. I have one client, I've been seeing him for a long time, and he's just like the most wonderful tantric sub boy ever. And he gets some special privileges and we do a little bit more touch and stuff. But generally speaking, it's like a very one-way experience.
Bring on the foot worship, girl. I remember I had guys who would come in and just pay to massage me. And I'm like, "Oh, I'm so glad so-and-so is coming in tonight because my feet,
Yes,
I love it. I love it.
1000%. Yep.
Okay. This has been, first of all, I'm sure very eye opening for a lot of people. And you have been amazing just opening up and sharing it. And I know you have a very unique experience being a shamanetrix, but I do want to shift over before we end and talk a little bit about your music because like I said, it really is great. I mean, you rap incredible. I was actually sitting next to my daughter because she was supposed to come when I met you in person and she was listening to the music and she's like, "Oh my god, she's amazing." But you really
Love
are.
that.
And so your music, it has you rap like conscious rap, spirituality, self-expression. How does music connect with your work? And does it connect with your dom work?
Great question. So for me, sexual energy and creative energy, they both come from the same place in the body. And so when they're one is choked, often the other will be choked, but we can sometimes use one to heal the other, etc. And so on an energetic level, I'm still working in the same energy, the same kind of like quantum realm. I'm just like putting different skill sets on top of it. And then a lot of my work is like very high key about I'm like women stepping into power. Everyone step into your power. Everyone realize that you're a creator. Like, don't suffer this fucking world anymore. Like, step into your purpose. That's what we need in this world. So I like to think that my music is like very medicinal, but still a bop.
You guys, you rap super fast. Like you said earlier,
Yeah.
people think about like white girl getting on stage to rap. And, like if I went on there, I would sound like Cat in the Hat. Okay. You don't sound like that. I can make some really good Cat in the Hat raps though.
I love it. Hell yeah, I'm here for that.
I'll send you some. Where could people find your music?
Yeah, so I have a brand new project. I had like a neo soul and rap band project, live band project that I've had for like many years. And I just end of last year decided to take my music in a new direction where I'm doing like very specifically rap, hip hop, and bass music and with production instead of live music and a little bit more kind of like a harder edge. And I'm a singer. I've been in church and chorus singing since I was a little baby, but I'm doing a little bit less singing and really focusing on just like lyrical precision and rapping. It's a little bit more masculine. And like my shows in the past were very feminine. Like I'm a burlesque dancer as well, and I'm a pole dancer. So I would like include those like very beautiful feminine dances. And now I'm just like, put me in my sweatpants and a pair of boots and let me just like get this medicine out like in the most direct way possible in this kind of like very masculine way. And so that's been the vibe for this project. And so you can find my old album and singles and old music under my name, Sam Sharman, on Spotify. But I'm recording my new music this summer, and this fall I'll have an EP and a bunch of collaborative singles that I'll be releasing throughout the fall under my project, which is called
Ooh.
which are my initials, Sam and Sharman. So SAS, that's my new project. Old project Sam Sharman is on Spotify still, though.
Well, follow Sam so that you can see when the new project comes out. That's really exciting. I'm really happy
Yes.
for you. Do
Thank
you
you.
think that creativity and sexuality come from the same place?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I can locate it right here. It's your sacral chakra. It's whether you have a physical womb or not, we all have an energetic and ethereal womb. We all have masculine parts. We all have feminine parts. We all have dominant parts. We all have submissive parts. Some of us, it's a range, and some of us have more of that energy and less of that energy, but we all have it. And it lives here in our ethereal womb and our sacral chakra. And there's a lot of crossover, like I said, between those energies when we're expressing them, and they can
Okay, that's what you were alluding to earlier. Why do you think people are so disconnected from them both?
because I think sexual violence is one of the deepest core wounds of our collective consciousness on this planet, whether we've experienced directly, which most of us have, but even if we haven't, it's in our lineage for sure. It's in our friends for sure. It's in our family, almost certainly for sure. Someone living in our family has experienced sexual violence. And even beyond all that, the messaging around the control around sexuality, around, yeah, you can do that as long as it's controlled and patriarchal. You can look hot as long as it's for me, for my gaze, or or you're a slut and you're not
Mm.
deserving of God's love and you're going to go to hell because you're sinning with your sexuality. Like the relationship between those two things being tied over, sin and sexuality, is like the most damaging narrative that continues to persist on our planet. Our sexuality is our access to our divine and superpower, and it is very intentionally put there by patriarchy to separate us from our power. So that is how I would answer that question.
I love it. And you are very clearly passionate about what you do. And you bring up a lot of great points. You're spot on with all of that. I'm thinking about my own family, and I can say, yes, that's very true.
Mhm.
Most people won't step foot into your world, but they may relate to like hiding parts of themselves. And so, what do you think the cost of living a life where you're constantly performing who you think you're supposed to be? I mean, what is that going to cost them?
Yeah, everything, everything. Like, how much do you want to be alive? How much do you want to feel? How much do you want to, like you just identified, like, I'm very passionate. Are you out there in your passion? Are you out there in your pleasure? I really, truly believe this to my core that everyone here is here for a purpose, for a reason. It might be becoming an artist or sharing your music or being a CEO of an amazing company that you created and you're doing good in the world, or being an amazing mother, or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. But you need to find what it is that you're here for. And every moment that you don't spend doing that thing, there is a gap between your pleasure and your potential and where you are. And that gap creates suffering. That's where the suffering comes from. Okay. And not only that, but what you are here for is medicine for the world. So when you are not doing what you're supposed to be doing, you're also depriving the world and everyone around you of the medicine that you should be offering, whether it's poetry or, yeah, a massage or like whatever it is. That's medicine to the world that someone needed and that you didn't give them because you weren't brave enough to step into it. And that gap will just continue to create suffering wider and wider and wider until, again, you just numb out and you just pretend it's not there and you just take a steady diet of Xanax until you die, or you change your life around. And again, it's not easy work. It's incredibly challenging, but it is the only thing that will actually lead to that feeling of liberation and alignment and juicy life.
Incredibly rewarding. Absolutely. Is there anything you want to leave the audience with before we go?
I am a very open book and I love helping people come up. I've been blessed with amazing mentors and friends and people who have offered me support and guidance and inspiration. And it's an honor to give that back into my community. So if you have questions about stepping into your power, about sexual healing, about what does it take to be a professional artist, anything like that, I'm totally an open door. But all of my Instagram accounts have been shut down so many times. So I'm starting from scratch again, but you can find me on Instagram at the SAS Revolution. That's for my music, the SAS Revolution, and the Mistress Samantha for my dominatrix world. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Yeah, and I'll have both of those in the show notes for you guys. So keep an eye out for that. But Sam, again, this has been one of the most, I guess, unique conversations that I've had on the authentic advantage, anyways. And when, whether people agree with everything we discussed or not, I think the biggest takeaway is that behind every label is a human being, and behind every profession is a story. So thank you for being willing to share your experiences, challenges, assumptions, and giving us a glimpse into a world that most people never get to see. For everyone listening, if this conversation made you think, question, or see something differently, make sure you share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, authenticity isn't about fitting into someone else's definition of who you should be. It's about having the courage to understand who you already are. So thank you again, and we'll see you next time on The Authentic Advantage.